Introduction. Representing the property side of the transaction as we continue building the framework of agency relationships, we now shift to the opposite side of the transaction, listing agreements and landlord representation. While buyer and tenant representation focuses on acquiring property, listing and landlord representation centers on marketing, negotiating, and protecting the interests of the property owner. In commercial real estate, this role carries significant responsibility because the agent is often advising on pricing strategy, lease structure, investment positioning, and long-term financial outcomes. Establishing this relationship properly is not optional. It must be clearly defined, documented, and compliant with Arizona law to ensure enforceability and to protect both the client and the broker. What is a listing agreement in commercial real estate? A listing agreement is a written employment contract between a property owner, seller or landlord, and a real estate broker that authorizes the broker to market and negotiate the sale or lease of a property. In commercial real estate, listing agreements often go far beyond simply placing a property in the MLS. They may include detailed marketing strategies, financial analysis, tenant mix considerations, and negotiations involving complex lease terms. Under ARES Section 44-101(7), a listing agreement must be in writing to be enforceable for compensation. Without a written agreement, the broker has no legal right to collect a commission, regardless of the work performed. This makes the listing agreement one of the most critical documents in the transaction. Types of listing agreements. There are several types of listing agreements used in commercial real estate, but the most common is the exclusive right to sell or lease. This type of agreement ensures that the broker is entitled to compensation regardless of who ultimately procures the buyer or tenant. In commercial transactions, this is especially important because deals often involve multiple parties, extended timelines, and overlapping negotiations. Another type is the exclusive agency listing, where the owner retains the right to sell or lease the property themselves without paying a commission. However, this structure is less common in commercial real estate due to the increased risk of disputes. Open listings, where multiple brokers compete without exclusivity, are rarely used in commercial settings because they create confusion and reduce accountability. Defining the broker's duties to the seller or landlord once a listing agreement is executed, the broker owes fiduciary duties to the seller or landlord. These duties include loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care as outlined under ACR 4-28-1101. In commercial real estate, these duties often involve advising clients on pricing strategies, evaluating offers, negotiating lease terms, and disclosing material facts that could impact the transaction. For example, if a broker becomes aware of a potential environmental issue or zoning restriction that could affect the property's value, they have a duty to disclose that information to their client. These responsibilities are not optional. They are legal obligations that, if violated, can result in disciplinary action under ARES Section 32 to 2153. Marketing and advertising responsibilities. Marketing a commercial property requires a strategic and compliant approach. Unlike residential listings, commercial properties often target a narrower and more specialized audience. This may include investors, business owners, or developers. Advertising must comply with Arizona regulations, including ACR 4-28-502, which governs advertising requirements. All marketing materials must be truthful, not misleading, and must clearly identify the employing broker. In addition, agents must ensure that any representations about the property, such as income potential, zoning allowances, or permitted uses, are accurate and supported by reliable data. Misrepresentation in advertising is one of the fastest ways to trigger complaints and potential disciplinary action. Lease negotiations and structuring in commercial settings. One of the most significant differences between residential and commercial real estate is the complexity of lease negotiations. Commercial leases can include a wide range of structures, such as gross leases, net leases, and percentage leases. The listing agent representing a landlord must understand these structures and be able to negotiate terms that align with the client's financial goals. This may include rent escalations, tenant improvement allowances, CM charges, and expense stops. Because these terms can have long-term financial implications, the agent must exercise a high level of competence and may need to recommend that the client seek legal or financial advice when appropriate. Consistent with ACR 4-28-1101 and ADRE policy guidance. Compensation and commission agreements. Compensation in listing agreements must be clearly defined and agreed upon at the time the contract is executed. In commercial real estate, commissions can vary significantly based on the type of transaction, property value, and lease structure. The agreement should outline how the commission will be calculated, when it will be earned, and how it will be paid. Under ACR 4-28-701, disclosure of compensation arrangements is required, including identifying all brokers who will receive compensation. This transparency is critical in maintaining trust and avoiding disputes between brokers and clients. Broker supervision and file compliance. From a compliance standpoint, listing agreements are a key component of broker supervision. Under ACR 4-28-1103, designated brokers are required to ensure that all listing agreements are properly executed, documented, and maintained in the transaction file. This includes verifying that all required disclosures are completed and that the agreement complies with Arizona law. In commercial real estate, where transactions can be complex and long-term, maintaining accurate and complete records is essential for both compliance and risk management. Bringing it all together, representing the asset listing agreements and landlord representation are about more than just selling or leasing property. They're about representing an asset and maximizing its value. The broker's role is to guide the client through complex decisions, ensure compliance with legal requirements, and protect the client's interests at every stage of the transaction. A well-structured listing agreement sets the foundation for this relationship and provides the framework for a successful transaction. As we move into the next section, we will explore how agency relationships are managed when multiple parties and potential conflicts of interest come into play. Online discussion: why is an exclusive right to sell or lease agreement preferred in commercial real estate? Answer: it ensures the broker is compensated regardless of who procures the buyer or tenant and reduces disputes in complex transactions. What are the key fiduciary duties owed to a seller or landlord? Answer: loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Why is accurate advertising especially important in commercial real estate? Answer: because commercial buyers and tenants rely heavily on financial and property data, and misrepresentation can lead to significant legal liability.